And welcome back to the Mark Moses Show as we're going to do another round of UCF football discussion. We've done it all season long with my good friends Trace Trylko with Sons of UCF and Eric Lopez with Black and Gold Banneret. I'll start with Eric. I know he was doing UCF volleyball last night. How did it go, Eric?
Went very well. UCF volleyball once again beat South Florida, swept them in 3 sets. 19th straight win UCF has had over South Florida. They have never lost to the Bulls in volleyball during the American Conference era, and so that's a pretty impressive stat. Pretty much dominance there. That's why that's not a rivalry, but they're doing well, and so is football.
Yeah, you're not kidding around, scoring 70 points. Trace, how you doing today?
I am doing well. 70 points. When was that game? It seems like a while ago now, doesn't it?
We talked about this last week. All right, so we played on a Wednesday, a Thursday, a Friday. Do we play Saturday if you're UCF football?
The Knights are on the road outside the state of Florida in East Carolina, in Greenville, North Carolina on Saturday night.
Okay, we'll stay with you, Trace, real quick. Then we'll go back to Eric. Tell us about what happened last week when they dropped 70 points on the Owls.
Everything's firing on offense. All that patience by Coach Gus Malzahn and staff being rewarded with John Rice Plumlee, who's suddenly finding wide receivers and reading defenses, and just a domination of an overmatched Temple Owls team. Knights 5-1 overall, 2-0 in the AAC. The one blemish, of course, that Louisville game from earlier in the season, which I think Knight Nation would like to have played this week. They'd like their chances better now that JRP is firing on all cylinders.
All right, I'll stay with that. Eric Lopez, what have you seen from the quarterback of UCF over the last couple of weeks, and especially what you saw last week?
Well, I think they simplified some things offensively that he can execute. They're not making him do too much. I think they've called a good game plan, and I think JRP is executing. He's more comfortable. I think the receivers were more comfortable. But let's also, let's not act like they played the Philadelphia Eagles. They played a Temple Owls team that, honestly, you could argue they shouldn't have a football program if they did the old English Premier League, regular, delegation where you just drop teams after each season. I would personally be in favor of that in college football, where you just drop teams after each year.
Temple, UCF would have been relegated based on your model in a previous season.
a couple times. But I mean, Temple's terrible. But look, offensively, they took advantage of that. They didn't go through the motions. They played well, and I think this is Gus Malzahn. That's what his vision was when he named JRP, was what we saw last week with JRP. That's why he named him the quarterback, because there's no way that Mikey Keene would have ever performed like that against Temple. No way.
Are there standouts on offense, Trace? I'll ask you this, that needs some love, especially after what you saw 70 points.
How about Colton Boomer with 10 extra points? Can we name him?
Yeah.
No, that was a special teams guy. Kobe Hudson showed up in this game, and suddenly it wasn't just JRP to Javon Baker. You also saw Ryan O'Keefe in this game, and so now he's developing that chemistry with a couple of different wide receivers. So that's been important. Another standout, how about Thomas Castellanos, the true freshman? Who gets some action, ends up being the leading rusher in this game, but good work for him. And back to Eric's point, yeah, they should have beaten Temple, and that's what you're supposed to do. And this is the game that you produce those sorts of points, because remember, a couple weeks earlier, a little bit of a struggle and a slog with an overmatched Georgia Tech team, and now everybody up in arms. Oh, they struggled to beat Georgia Tech. So, hey, when they put up 70, give them their due. It'll be a little bit harder on the road this weekend.
Anything to add to that, Eric, with the offense dropping 70?
Yeah, I think if you're UCF, you feel really good about your quarterback position in the future with JRP improving, and then what Thomas Castellanos showed to the point where I wonder what Trace thinks about this. But if something were to happen to JRP and he would get hurt, I not necessarily would call Mikey Keene into the game. I actually would go with Castellanos, because he runs exactly the same offense that JRP would run it. Mikey Keene's a completely different quarterback. I don't think they would miss as much of it would not be as big of an adjustment if they went to Castellanos. I understand he's young, but man, I was really impressed with him, and I'm excited about his future here at UCF, to be honest. That was one of my big takeaways.
Coach Malzahn went out of his way to say on Monday during his media availability that they're not looking to burn anybody's red shirts. Thomas Castellanos has seen action in 4 games, but then when asked in follow-up, he said Mikey Keene was the backup quarterback. In this age of college football, Does anybody think Thomas Castellanos is going to be a 4-year or a 5-year
Right.
UCF Knight? You've got to do what's in the best interest of the team. And Coach Malzahn may face this, especially not necessarily as a result of injury, but as a result of a game that has gotten out of hand, a blowout. There's Navy up coming on the schedule, a South Florida game to end the year. So, who's to say East Carolina, if the Knights continue to roll, that they're not up sizably late in the fourth quarter? What's he going to do then? That will be interesting to see. But he does have the 4 games that he could utilize Mikey Keene if he needed to hand off the ball.
Let's go to Eric Lopez. We'll go to the defensive side of the ball. Can we finally put a stamp on this team and say, look, they got a good defense, and you're going to have to, if you're in the American Conference, you're going to have to deal with this UCF defense?
Yeah, I do. They've been consistent. I know they got off to a bit of a sluggish start against Temple, but they fixed that really quickly. Travis Williams done a great job. I'm not ready to put him there as far as the best UCF defense conversation yet, because I think the schedule's been very favorable. But I think, with this schedule, this defense, I think, will continue to play very well. I mean, I don't think they're playing a lot of offensive juggernauts. They're going to have a chance to win every game with this defense, and that's why if you're UCF, you're excited because early in the year, the media pumped up the Sun Belt Conference and wow, look at who they beat and all this stuff. And guess what's happened? They have fallen apart. They beat each other up. And now look who's the path is clear. To me, the American Conference champion, whether it's UCF or a Cincinnati or maybe Tulane, if you're a believer of them, to me, if one of those 3 teams wins out between now and then, that's a clear path to New Year's Six, probably the Cotton Bowl. And if you're UCF, that would be nice to get that path, considering where you're going next year to the Big 12. And I think this defense gives them a chance to get there with if the way they're playing every game.
Trace, okay, I'll flip it on you. Give me some shout outs for the defensive players who need some love then.
I'd say my first half MVP on defense is Jeremiah Jean-Baptiste, and as well the linebacker core. If we go back 6-7 weeks, there was great concern amongst Knight Nation who's going to step up in the linebacker core. Jason Johnson as well, the FCS transfer. He has done well. So I think those are some guys that have really stood out. Again, this is a front-loaded schedule, though. And to Eric's point about teams beating one another up, UCF's got Cincinnati at home. They've got Memphis, Tulane on the road. So there's still some they could beat one another up in this. And UCF is benefited by 5 of 6 at home, the road game at FAU. So the back half of the schedule, much more challenging, 4 of 6 on the road with true road tests. Of course, that may be a fan and media talking point. Is it really that difficult to get to East Carolina? Is it really that disruptive? Defensively, they've been strong. No sacks on Temple. Coach Travis Williams, defensive coordinator, during the Sunday night media availability said, not too concerned about that. As long as you're putting pressure on the quarterback and they're throwing away the ball, but no sacks on Temple. And the slow starts, neither he nor players asked had any real explanation for that, but that has been a trend over the course of the season. Of course, they course correct pretty quickly, and they've been stout, under 20 points each of their games.
Did you two feel old when it's Kurt Warner's son as the quarterback? Did you like that?
Eric?
I felt old when they were talking about how JRP matched Dante Culpepper's touchdowns in a single game for a quarterback. Because I saw Dante Culpepper in person when he was his senior year at UCF. That was my first trip ever to check out, hey, what's this school in UCF? I ever heard of this school because of this Culpepper guy. That's what I felt old. The Kurt Warner son thing is what it is. I mean, look, when you're reaching for straws as broadcasters when you have to call a game that includes a bad team like Temple. You're just glad you're going to throw that in there every other sentence.
All right, let's clarify this for our listeners and the viewers, by the way. We're here with Trace Trylko and Eric Lopez talking UCF football. Wait a minute. Have they only played one road game so far on the season?
Yeah, that was right? In Boca. That was in Boca.
A de facto home game in real South Florida.
Yeah, and then it's a very favorable schedule. They have 9 games in the state of Florida. They only travel out of state to East Carolina this week is the first trip. I mean, it's going to be the first flight for a lot of these players on this team, which is kind of hilarious. They'll travel to Memphis and Tulane. They go to South Florida and Tampa at Raymond James at the end of the year. But we all know that's a home game for UCF. That's not a road game. So it's a favorable schedule, Mark, and that's why I think it's so critical that this team takes advantage of this schedule and win the conference and get to New Year's Six, because this is probably going to be the last favorable schedule that UCF's going to have for a while. Once they get into the Big 12, you're not going to have these type of schedules anymore with the Big 12 format, especially with the Big 12 going to 9 conference games.
All right, let's go to the game coming up this weekend. As Eric's saying, they're actually going to leave the state of Florida. Trace, give us the preview for Saturday.
Seasoned veteran quarterback of ECU, Holton Ahlers. He's been there, what, a decade now? It certainly seems like it, right?
Weren't you in school, Trace, when Holton was started there?
He's consistent in being inconsistent, right? He is sort of what he is at this point. He can beat you, but he can also get picked off. Keaton Mitchell is someone to watch. 3 touchdowns and a 4 overtime win last week over Memphis. He's got some speed. He can get on the outside and the edge and cause some problems for the UCF defense. So this is a challenging game for UCF. The Dowdy Ficklin in Greenville is a loud, raucous environment, a night game. They're going to be pumped up for this one. This is a rivalry, old rivalry, dating back to Conference USA days, 10-10 all time between these two teams. Tipping point, perhaps the last time they play one another. I think the Knights, they're favored in this one. They have the talent. They should win this one, but, they should have won at Navy last year and didn't. Your thoughts, Eric?
There's something tricky about this game because UCF should win this handily, yet the people that know in Vegas beg to differ. They only have UCF, I believe, about a 4.5, 5-point favorite, depending where you look. And this is a bit of a trap game. UCF's got the Cincinnati game following this weekend. There was speculation and rumors about innuendo about maybe ESPN College Game Day coming to UCF Cincinnati. More details on that on blackandgoldbanneret.com. I broke that down.
Cheap plug.
Thank you. But this is a bit of a trap game. East Carolina is calling this, quote, the boneyard game, which means, hey, they want to pull the upset and put it kind of like the Undertaker theme there. You're going to hear a lot of Undertaker theme. So, and remember, these two teams always seem to play close games. Last year, really, East Carolina should have won that game. Holton Ahlers threw a couple picks. That's what he tends to do, is throw a costly pick. But they're coming off a come-from-behind win over Memphis. They've got some momentum. So will UCF's team travel, literally, their good performance, travel out of state? That's one of the things I'm interested in with defense. And then the offensively, they're going to actually hear some crowd noise against them for the first time this year. So I'm very interested to see that. Can't overlook this team because, as Trace mentioned, I mean, you could get upset by East Carolina. And if that happens, then you could wave pretty much bye-bye to any chance of College Game Day coming here.
Mark, can I ask you this?
Go
Eric
for it.
Mentioned trap game. The coaches were asked this. They batted it down. Is that a media device? Is that a talking point we use, or do you believe that there are such things as trap? Isn't that a discipline issue, that if coaches and players are disciplined and focused on the task at hand, they're not looking ahead?
Well,
and
this is, I had an old GM tell me this one time. He's like, what makes college football great is, he's like, they're 18 to 20-year-olds. These aren't pro athletes. So they can have all the confidence they have in the world. You're going on the road for the first time and leaving the state in a long time. I think it can be a trap game. And like you said, I can't believe I have to bring this up. If Vegas only thinks they're a 4-point favorite, that's not good. You just dropped 70 points on national TV, and they only think you're a 4-point favorite. What's up with that? So I think it can be a trap game. I do.
Hey, listen, when I record Black and Gold Banneret podcast, I that's like a trap game for me because I'm thinking ahead to the Mark Moses show segment. That's right. So it's not just applying to athletes, okay?
All right. I'll throw it back at you, Trace. Do you think that is something the media uses?
I think it's a talking point the media uses. I guess we will see on Saturday night. I think that if you're disciplined and focused and on the game plan, I don't think that this is what they're looking ahead to, is Cincinnati. I think there are variables in this ECU game, the true road game, a raucous environment, and Dowdy Ficklin in Greenville. These are things that this team has not yet had to face. This composition of this team, certainly players have played in big game atmospheres, but now you've got John Rice Plumlee leading this offense in what will be a noisy. So starting off strong, quieting that crowd, going to be important for them, or they're going to be maybe in a bit of a dogfight.
Hey, the FAU game, they started slow, UCF. And, Florida Atlantic was making plays. Then John Rice Plumlee turned into Superman and dove into the end zone. That woke up the team. Hey, and wasn't it 2014 when Holman threw the bomb for the win?
Hail Perriman.
Perryman, which, by the way, they just call it a Hail Mary. I did a show with ECU this week, and they don't. I kept referring to it as Hail Perryman. It is not their language. It made me think, okay, that's true. It's not how you guys refer to it. So, yeah, shades of that. And I saw something that threw me off this week. George O'Leary's last win was in that Hail Perryman game.
That's right.
And I have never really put that together because they would lose the bowl game. And then,
when
2015, when Eric would have had them relegated to the FCS.
In my defense, Trace, that team would have deserved to get relegated the way that team here went, all right?
I'll end with this. I remember in 2017, they played East Carolina at home. And I took my dad. I was like, hey, you got to see this UCF offense with Mackenzie Milton. You got to see it in person. So we go to the game, and we get there right before kickoff. And my dad's like, well, should we get something to eat and then go to our seats at kickoff? What should we do? I swear, we get burgers, and UCF already scored in the first 15 seconds. And I'll always remember that with UCF football. It's unbelievable. Trace, what do we need to check out to get us ready for Saturday?
Knights performing well in a road environment. Let's see John Rice Plumlee continue to be consistent. He's put together a good second half against SMU and a good 3 quarters until he was relieved against Temple. But this is a true test, and ECU can score on you, and they have some talent. But the defense, I think, is overmatched. UCF's issues are just, will they be self-inflicted? We've seen that with penalties and turnovers in other games. Defense starting off strong. You don't want Holt Nailers to get into a groove, and you don't want to get beat by Keaton Mitchell. So I think limiting mistakes, this is typical football, right? JRP showing that consistency. To your point, are they going to continue? Maybe not 70 points, but are they going to continue to be an offensive juggernaut? They need to prove that this weekend. But Coach Malzahn says, as do the rest of the coaches, get out of there with a win, no matter how pretty, no matter what you need to do. Also, I think something to watch is Colton Boomer has benefited by home crowds, and now he hasn't had to make a pressure kick. Does it come down to something that this true freshman needs to make a very important kick?
Hey, you know what? I'll just say, and I'll go to you, Eric. The weather. They haven't left Florida. If you think about, I know we got chilly weather right now. We'll see what it's like at kickoff with the weather for this game. What about you, Eric?
Might be warmer in Greenville than Orlando. Who knows at this point, right? I mean,
your Saturday night forecast is 53 degrees.
Ooh, it's close. He's pretty even. Look, I think this matchup, I'm glad we're thinking of positive moments in UCF East Carolina history, because I keep thinking about Chris Johnson, the former NFL star.
He's still running.
Yeah, running all over UCF back in the day. Look, don't overlook him. I do think this is a trap game. I disagree with Trace. 18 to 22-year-olds don't have a lot of attention span. Don't disrespect this team and think about looking ahead to Cincinnati. Especially, remember, Cincinnati's going to be playing at noon against SMU, so they're going to know what Cincinnati did before they step on.
Maybe they're looking ahead.
Maybe they could too. So don't get off to a slow start, because that building, I've been to the East Carolina football stadium. I think it's actually, when it's full, when they're engaged, I think it's actually, and this is controversial, I know this, might be the best atmosphere in the American Conference. Even better than the bounce house. Yeah. It's a beautiful stadium. I don't have to worry about the stadium shaking and wondering, is this stadium falling apart? No, it's a great stadium if they're engaged at night. Now, overall, I would take UCF's environment, but they're going to be ready for this game. Last time they play, don't get off to a bad start. It's going to be a tough place to come from behind. Turnovers, I think, is a key factor. One thing GRP's done a pretty good job lately, protecting the football. That's going to have to continue against East Carolina, and force Holton Ahlers to throw his patented 1 or 2 picks a game, pull away, and then you can start looking ahead to Cincinnati. But don't disrespect this team, because I think this will be one of the tougher environments UCF will face probably all year. This one and Memphis, to me, are probably going to be the 2 toughest environments they'll see all year.
And what you were saying about the atmosphere there, going into the new look American, they're probably the premier program in terms of fan support in this new league.
For football,
maybe UT San Antonio, they draw good crowds.
The Roadrunners. I like it. I do. What do we need to check out with Sons with UCF?
Sons of UCF live show Thursday, 8 to 9, streaming on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And wherever you get your downloadable content, you can listen to Adam and Mike. Their podcast drops earlier in the week.
Eric, what about you?
First of all, I feel like Trace has used some of this for his material for that show. But you can catch me on Eric Lopez Elo on Twitter and blackandgoldbanneret.com. We'll have a podcast to preview the East Carolina game with myself. Kyle Nash will be in there. Jeff Sharon and company. We'll have the Olympic sports breakdowns. Volleyball keeps rolling. 16-1. Women's soccer trying to win a conference championship. We'll break that down on blackandgoldbanneret.com. And we'll get you set for the night shift on Saturday night, UCF and East Carolina. And again, if UCF and Cincinnati both win with some help, we might be getting some news of perhaps College Game Day coming to Orlando for UCF. Mark, are you going to be a guest picker? Are you going to be the celebrity guest picker?
That would be great. We've done enough of Tennessee as the College Game Day.
No, let's go back there again.
Keep going. Here's what I'd want. Perfect scenario. College Game Day, then a noon kickoff. Make it super crazy.
Could happen.
That's what it should be. Trace and Eric, thank you so much for your help and have a great day. All right, guys?
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.